I want to give a big shout out to all my patrons, my Wildlings, my Night's Watch, and my Kingsguard, which feature Brendan, Nick, Oscar, Stuart, Pat, Ikaika, Amanda, RJ, Shad, Nicoletta, and Ezra. Thank you all so much. You're the best.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Fantasy Network. I am, of course, Jimmy Nuts, and today we're reviewing Deadhouse Gates by Steven Erikson, Book 2 in Malazan. I was very high on Gardens of the Moon, and I wanted to see if Deadhouse Gates would step it up for me. And spoiler alert, it did. I'm going to do mostly spoiler-free here. At the very end, I'll let you know I'm going to go into a little bit of spoilers. And a heads up, from this point on, every review after this one, from Memories and Ice on, will just be spoilers. I feel like at Book 3, you're either in or you're out, and I don't know how beneficial a spoiler-free review would be for books 3 through 10. So those will all be full spoiler reviews, and I'm still going to do discussions, and I will do a spoiler discussion with people on the channel in a live stream for Deadhouse Gates as well. I did want to do this one spoiler-free as well because I feel like it's a different taste of Malazan. Like, you could not like Gardens of the Moon and like Deadhouse Gates or vice versa. I happen to like both, but I still feel like we're scratching the surface. So I want to say, if you're not sold by Gardens of the Moon, you're curious about Deadhouse Gates, this would be a good time to have a spoiler-free review. And you're probably wondering, were you as confused in Deadhouse Gates as you were in Gardens of the Moon? I would say almost the same. I would say it's a little less because I think Erikson's writing actually takes a big step up here in Deadhouse Gates, but it is still kind of confusing. And I have to be honest with you, folks, I'm not a huge fan of desert settings. And the Seven Cities is across the sea or the ocean or whatever, totally different continent, and there's a lot of desert. And I have never enjoyed that in video games. I've never enjoyed it in movies. It is what it is. I do enjoy Dune, which has a lot of sand. I hate sand. But the desert setting did not restrict me from enjoying Deadhouse Gates. I think that at times, it can feel a little bland out there with all the desert stuff and all the sand. But it didn't really hamper my experience. And right out of the gate, the thing I can notice about Deadhouse Gates is I feel like it has a lot more atmosphere. Like the Seven Cities, even though I just said I don't really care for the desert stuff, it is more atmospheric. I think Gardens of the Moon, Pale had a good atmosphere. Darujhistan was okay. But overall, I just thought like some of the descriptions in the scene setting could have been a little bit better. I don't want to use the word hollow because I don't think Gardens of the Moon was that. I actually thought it had a lot of character and a lot of charm. But the scene setting and descriptions are much better in Deadhouse Gates. My only gripe is the same one I had in Gardens of the Moon. I don't care how many feet long the gate is. I just don't necessarily care or how many paces things are away. I feel like this is probably going to be a consistent thing throughout the series, so I'm going to stop mentioning now, but I just needed to say that if that bothered you in book 1, it's still here in book 2. It would be unjust of me if I didn't mention how ridiculously dark this prologue was of Deadhouse Gates. I mean, it was pretty rough. You got like a being made of like flies, which I think was like a demon or hood priest, a priest of hood, if I remember correctly. And it was like really, really weird stuff, but it was also really dark and pretty hard times have fallen upon the people during the culling. I thought it was really interesting to see the fallout for Ganos and from Gardens of the Moon and basically his life being exchanged for another. And it seems to be that could have been his dad. That's speculation, I'm not sure. And then his sister Tavor is now adjunct, and she's kind of executing this culling of the noble houses. And that happens to include Ganos' and Tavor's little sister, Felicin. And she's being taken to a mine to essentially, I think it's mining like dust, if I remember correctly, that kind of nullifies sorcery. But she's essentially going into slavery. And Ganos is my boy. I loved him in Gardens of the Moon. And me, thinking about, I know I'm going to see him in Memories of Ice, right? And I'm like, how is he going to handle this news? Because honestly, Ganos seems like a pretty nice guy. And his family is messed up bad. And yeah, there are a lot of new POVs here. There are some left over from Gardens of the Moon that I really appreciated, specifically Kalam and Fiddler and Crocus and all those people. And I think that the new POVs were a good addition. I actually really enjoyed them, but it was also really hard and jarring to figure them out because I had just figured out the Gardens of the Moon cast. But I did like pretty much every single POV that we got here in Deadhouse Gates that was not in Gardens of the Moon. And another level up for me in Erikson's writing is I thought the POV switches were actually a lot better and a little bit more natural feeling. I thought it was a lot easier to kind of follow the pacing in the switches and where people were going, and you can start to see how they're all going to come together. I just thought it was done a little bit smoother in Deadhouse Gates. I loved the ending of part 1. It was wild, and I didn't see it coming. And I think that with a series like this that does take its time to get into so many details, we need those wild and crazy moments. And at the end of part 1, it was the first time where I was like, okay, if this kind of stuff keeps up, it could end up being like an all-time great series for me, which I really enjoyed Gardens of the Moon, but Deadhouse Gates here at the end of part 1 was the first time where I was like, okay, like, you had my attention, but now you're just impressing the hell out of me. Erikson dives into some really gritty details here in Deadhouse Gates, specifically talking about the chain of dogs. The chain of dogs is one of the most down, low level inspections of how sick wartime can get and how brutal it can be, and just like the mental toll it takes on people. I think a lot of people try to write this stuff, and I've seen it done pretty well. I think the chain of dogs is one of like the best examples though that I've ever seen. And some of this, the nitty gritty details that Erikson's not afraid to lean into, can make your stomach turn. And also there's just like an element of creepiness to some of the stuff. And I know that Alan from Library of Alexandria is going to hate this, but Iskaral Pust absolutely had an amazing moments where he's like spinning in this chair and he's like just shouting prophecies, and it was kind of creepy. And I don't really feel creeped out by books too often, but I mean, it was on borderline silly, but also kind of felt creepy, and I did think it was a good scene. Iskaral Pust is not someone that I would say I loved in this book, but he did have his moments. And I love the Chain of Dogs, but I'll be honest with you, my favorite like little subset or subquest in this book, our group was Felsen, Bodden, and Herbork. I thought that their dynamic was really grim, but also really fun to read. Maybe fun's not the word. It was intense. It was very intense, and it poses a lot of questions to the reader. It poses questions about who has the moral high ground between the three, because they're all trying to survive. But information's not being relayed between the three of them, and it causes a lot of issues. And at the end of the day, just trying to survive, it's like you have to scrape by and get any power that you can. I plan on talking about this quite a bit in the spoiler discussion that I'm going to do, which is going to be a live stream. I'll probably have Rhythma and Philip Chase back on for that. And I might talk about it a little bit when I cover spoilers here at the end. But there's just like a lot of internal conflict in everybody, really, specifically Felsen. It's pretty bad. But also Kalam. Kalam gave me major gunslinger vibes. I just read The Dark Tower, so like, I don't know, he's going across the desert, he's killing people, and he's clearly a much bigger deal than at first was let on. And I just feel like a legend kind of building around him, that like he's the most badass assassin that we have. And I think that's one thing that Deadhouse Gates and Malazan now as a whole is really selling me on. It's like, you get introduced these characters, and there's like a paragraph, you get a good sense of who they are, at least I feel like I do. And then like all of a sudden you hear someone else talking about this person that you just met that seems like a fairly normal person in this crazy world. And there's like a hint that like, oh no, like they're a major deal. And I like the fact that like what can seem like a throwaway character in Gardens of the Moon comes out swinging in Deadhouse Gates and then ends up being someone that might be more powerful than almost any other assassin there is. And can be used as a tool in war. And I don't know, characters have infinite value, it feels like, in the Malazan universe. And some of them are just tools, some of them are just powerful at one certain thing. But I like the fact that there's a lot of potential in cast members that you don't even realize are important. One kind of con, since we're talking about the military stuff now, that I wanted to talk about is at the end, I think it was end of part 2. Yeah, it was end of part 2 on with the road. For some reason, Erikson's writing in the combat scenes sometimes gets a little bit convoluted to me, and I don't understand everything that's going on, and it can take away from the moments. I mentioned it in Gardens of the Moon, and I kind of felt like that in Deadhouse Gates. Now, personally, I don't really think it's an Erikson problem. I think it's a me being dumb problem, and that's fine, but I had to read it multiple times, and then I also had to look up, there's like the reading along guide that I think it's 10 Very Big Books did, or somebody on Twitter. Somebody did something, and I read the guide, and I had to like go for those external resources there, and that was the first time in Deadhouse Gates where I felt like I needed an external source to really have a grasp of what's going on, because I didn't think I should have been confused, but I was. But with that said, I really did enjoy the combat on the road, or off the road rather, and the impact and fallout that it had on Duker was major, and this is where Duker became like one of my favorite characters. If you watch my Gardens of the Moon review, I said one of the things that I hoped Erikson did was give us a little bit more information about how like the everyday person lives. Like I like being with the grunts and the military and the sorcerers and the leaders and all this stuff, but I want to see how like everyday people are living, right? And sorry is kind of like that, right? Like she gets possessed and abducted, you know, all this stuff, and she's on a wild ride, and she's in a fisher village. She wants to go fish. But I said I needed more. I need to see how, like, does everyone just know that Warrens exist and stuff? But there's a really good portion, and I believe it was Manala. Yeah, it was in part 3 with Manala, and she goes into the Warren with Kalam, and she thought it had all been hogwash. And that tells me that, no, the normal person in Malazan, like living in Pale before I got sieged or whatever, doesn't actually know that the sorcery is like ready to go and real. It's very much considered like kind of like, not a fairy tale, but like hogwash. Like, oh, that stuff doesn't really happen. It's overblown. And it's a dynamic that was missing in Gardens of the Moon that Deadhouse Gates finally kind of cashed in on. And Kalam sits there and he goes, oh yeah, I guess like, you know, I do this all the time. I forgot, like some people just don't believe in this. Like some people don't even know that this exists. And that gives me a pretty good perspective of the worldview with this war. I do think it's a little odd that they wouldn't know this whenever, like, you know, there's like dragons flying around and stuff. That's like a little odd. But you know, it's not everywhere. So I thought that this was a great moment, and it really went a long way with me because it was one of my complaints from Gardens of the Moon. And part 3 was just excellent. Like I said, the combat scenes, sometimes I get a little bit confused, but one of the things that kind of stuck out to me in part 3 of this book was I really started to realize how much I am invested in the characters, and I think it sneaks up on you with indirect characterization. Like, you don't realize how well you're getting to know these characters, and then with the switches of POVs and the conversations and the way the information's relayed between characters, like, you just learn so much about these characters without realizing, because it's not exposition-y and info dumpy. I think it's like borderline great. I'll be honest with you. My biggest misconception from Malazan was that there was weak characters. I said that in Gardens of the Moon, and it is even more true in Deadhouse Gates. And Ikram and Mappo's relationship, oh, oh man, tragically wonderful. I loved it. I don't know how people feel about Mappo. I don't think Alan, I mentioned Alan because me and him talk about Malazan a lot. I don't know if he necessarily likes Mappo, but I thought Ikram and Mappo just walking around being friends with this underlying secret, you know, that Ikram can't remember. I don't know. I really like their dynamic, and I really like their bromance, and I was there for it. So I've mentioned like some stuff that kind of like maybe was confusing to me or I didn't like. There were 2 cons in the book that I kind of want to talk about. And this is where I'm going to have to go into spoilers to kind of explain it. But I guess to give you a spoiler-free kind of overview before I jump into the spoiler section. Manala's storyline didn't do a lot for me, if I'm being honest with you. And also, Kalam was so awesome throughout the whole book, but there were just one little thing about the ending. I liked where it ended up, but I don't know if the justification was as great as I wanted it to be, but I've gotten some extra information that might make it better in the future. We'll see. But those are just 2 little things that I would say I didn't like love, but I thought this book was great. And with that, I want to start talking about some spoilers. Just a couple things. And I'm going to save a lot of it for the spoiler discussion I'm going to have here on the channel. But if you have not read Deadhouse Gates and you're here for spoiler-free, you have experienced all the spoiler-free content there's going to be in this video, and you can exit now. So spoilers, and I'm going to talk about the cons first here. Manala following Kalam seemed a little suspect. I don't know. Like, she just like drops her family and friends that she's with. Is like, I got to follow them. You know how it is. And she just like kind of goes. I didn't really love it. The romance so far in this book, I think like after it's established, it's fine. But with Ganos and Tattersail having insta-love in Gardens of the Moon, in my opinion, like, or at least borderline infatuation on Ganos' part. And then this where like she just runs after him. I didn't love it. I'll be honest. I just didn't. Now with that said, I really thought the scene with her like riding through the city, Malaz City, was awesome. I really enjoyed it. He was kind of the damsel in distress, and she was coming to save him. I thought that was a little good reversal there. It was fun. It was just, I wish there had been a better justification for her going other than being like, well, I gotta do it. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's nitpicking. And I do like them together. I just wish that her following him wouldn't have felt just so like, well, we gotta do it. And then the ending with Kalam is my other con. And I can talk about in spoiler context here because we're in the spoiler section. So like, I like the commentary of him being blinded by emotion and he wants to kill the scene and he's going to do it. I like him walking away from it. I actually enjoyed that. I like her talking through the dead body. All that's good. The only thing I don't understand, and Lysine says that she needs Kalam, like she has to have him. And then to send the claw after him, knowing that they cannot stop, seems a little silly. especially knowing that she wasn't going to be there. She's going to talk through her body, so she can't be killed. So it's not like she wanted him to get there so she could have that conversation with him. So why send the claw after him? He was already on his way to kill her. The claw didn't make him continue to do that. If anything, it risked everything. And I understand that she values Kalam more than the claw, but like, why would you want to lose people, especially in the middle of, trying to take over continents and stuff, and things are really hairy? It just doesn't seem smart to be throwing away like some of your best people for Kalam to kill and prove himself whenever you already know he's super special. So I just thought the justification for that was a little odd, even though I like the idea of it. Philip Chase said, and I agree with him, is maybe that it was check marks for Kalam to make sure he is who she thinks he is, so that he can ascend to another level. I don't know, mean like literal ascend, maybe, I don't know. We'll see what happens with him. But maybe it's just to make sure that she's right. And I know that she's probably playing 4D chess. She seems very intelligent. But even with that, again, just throwing soldiers away. The claw, you're throwing the claw away for Kalam to kill just so you can be like, yeah, I was right, he's real special. I don't know. I didn't love that part, even though I really enjoy Kalam and Lasine. And then I just wanted to talk about Duker's end of him being like crucified. I don't know if we've seen the last of him. He had a thing on his chest that broke open and whatnot. So like there's obviously other stuff coming, but man, that ending and the crucifixions, like, oh boy, I was like, the Malazan is not messing around. This is some serious stuff. And Duker's End was obviously very sad, but I thought it was so well done, like one of the best things. And for me, that's what put Deadhouse Gates above Gardens of the Moon for me. Even though I think I like Gardens of the Moon's cast more overall, and I really liked like the plot, like the fief and stuff like that, or the fete or whatever it was called, the little ball that they had with Animator Rake going in with a dragon mask, which is ridiculous. There's a lot of stuff I like about Gardens of the Moon, but I think Deadhouse Gates with Duker's End, and then also just the writing being better, I think it put Deadhouse Gates above Gardens of the Moon for me, even though I really still enjoyed Gardens of the Moon a lot. And then I want to talk about Fellowson real quick, and where I'm going to talk about this a lot more in a spoiler discussion, because Rhythm Ma has an amazing video about Fellowson. If you haven't seen it, go to her channel and check it out. It's very good. But real quick, what I want to say about Fellowson is, like, she's a survivor, like whether you like it or not. And I think people get very uncomfortable. They pick one side or the other. And I think people are uncomfortable when people are put into situations where there are no good choices and you literally have to do whatever you can to survive. And most of us will never be in that situation. But that does happen in the real world. And then it's very interesting to look back, because when we're out of this situation and we look back with a critical eye, judging things with, everything's hunky-dory, it's a lot different. Now, Fellowson said some vile things. There's no doubt about it. But I also think about where she is in her life, and her Bork and Bauden restricting information from her that maybe could have been helpful. I'm very interested to see how people react to that, and I also would like to talk a lot more about it in the spoiler discussion, but I want to put out there that I really enjoyed Fellowson's arc. The fact that, she ends up becoming like a whole, she's reborn, as the Shaik, or Shaik, however you say it. She's reborn, and also I love the little bait and switch where we think it's going to be Sari, and it ends up being Fellowson. And I thought her being reborn was amazing, and now they're like, there's this big conflict going on with her versus Tavor. And how's that going to impact Ganos? It is a messy situation going in to the Perron family reunion, I'm sure, here in a few books. My God. Dude, Malazan has sparked so much conversation within 2 books that some series never get to. I feel like I can talk about this book like I do with Realm of the Elderlings and Song of Ice and Fire, which is really good air to be in with me, because those are my 2 favorite series of all time. And I think Malazan is, with Deadhouse Gates, is starting to enter in already into great territory. So yeah, Deadhouse Gates was outstanding. I really enjoyed it. I did enjoy more than Gardens of the Moon, even though I think I still prefer the cast from Gardens of the Moon, which I know I'll be getting back to in Memories of Ice, which I'm actually already, I think I'm like 200 pages into that. I just finished part 1, and it's going very well, and I'll have a review up for that whenever I finish that, and that's going to be full of spoilers. I really appreciate you spending your time watching with me. This was a very dark book that inspected the human condition in some of the worst times of people's lives, especially through Duker and Fellison's POVs. I thought it was so gritty and real and human, and you know I love that stuff. Minus the Kalam stuff at the end, I thought the ending was excellent, and I love the way that Erikson wraps up his tales. They really feel like tales, even though obviously they continue on and they have connections and stuff. He knows how to kind of make it into a neat bow at the ending and have all the ties come together. And it's one of the most satisfying reading experiences I've had in a long time. And it's also changing how I read other books. So I understand why Malazan has a special place in a lot of people's hearts, and it's considered in kind of an achievement, right? Like there's a badge of honor when you get through Malazan, whether you like it or not. But I happen to like it quite a bit. Be on the lookout for my announcement on the community tab for the spoiler discussion for Deadhouse Gates. I'm going to try to get it done in the next week or so. I plan on having Rhythmon and Philip Chase on for that talk. Always subject to change depending on people's schedules and stuff, but I really hope that you'll attend that so we can get deeper into a lot of this stuff. And I didn't mention everything. I mean, the Chain of Dogs sequence, there is so much there. And then, you know, we can crap on Iskra Pust or whatever we want to do, but not Mappo. Mappo is my dude. If you like this video and you want to see more Malazan content, I'll be doing a ton on the channel here, a review for each book, a discussion, and probably some other things. I'd love to just have some deeper discussions about a lot of the themes here, because there's a lot of crazy stuff happening, and I need to slow down and just appreciate some of the mastery that Erikson's putting on paper. So hit like and subscribe, like I said, if you want to see more Malazan content. I have a ton of other reviews here on the channel that you might enjoy. I know there's a lot of new people coming to the channel to check this stuff out, and that's amazing. I'm very honored that you would spend your time here, and I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And until I see you next time, I hope you're good, I hope you're safe, and remember to always keep turning the page.